I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning, where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core. Some of my pleasantest hours were during the long rainstorms in the spring or fall, which confined me to the house for the afternoon as well as the forenoon, soothed by their ceaseless roar and pelting, when an early twilight ushered in a long evening in which many thoughts had time to take root and unfold themselves. In those driving northeast rains which tried the village houses so, when the maids stood ready with mop and pail in front entries to keep the deluge out, I sat behind my door in my little house, which was all entry, and thoroughly enjoyed its protection. In one heavy thunder shower the lightning struck a large pitch pine across the pond, making a very conspicuous and perfectly regular spiral groove from top to bottom, an inch or more deep, and 4 or 5 inches wide, as you would groove a walking stick. I passed it again the other day, and was struck with awe on looking up and beholding that mark, now more distinct than ever, where a terrific and resistless bolt came down out of the harmless sky 8 years ago. Men frequently say to me, I should think that you would feel lonesome down there, and want to be nearer to folks, rainy and snowy days and nights especially. I am tempted to reply to such. This whole earth in which we inhabit is but a point in space. How far apart, think you, dwell the 2 most distant inhabitants of yonder star, the breadth of whose disk cannot be appreciated by our instruments? Why should I feel lonely? Is not our planet in the Milky Way? This which you put to me seems not to be the most important question. What sort of space is that which separates a man from his fellows and makes him solitary? I have found that no exertion of the legs can bring 2 minds much nearer to one another. What do we want most to dwell near to? Not to men, surely. The depot, the post office, the bar-room, the meeting-house, the schoolhouse, the grocery, Beacon Hill, or the 5 Points, where men most congregate, but to the perennial source of our life, whence in all our experience we have found that to issue, as the willow stands near the water and sends out its roots in that direction. This will vary with different natures. This is the place where a wise man will dig his cellar. I one evening overtook one of my townsmen, who has accumulated what is called a handsome property, though I never got a fair view of it, on the Walden Road, driving a pair of cattle to market, who inquired of me how I could bring my mind to give up so many of the comforts of life. I answered that I was very sure I liked it passably well. I was not joking. And so I went home to my bed, and left him to pick his way through the darkness and the mud to Brighton, or Bright Town, which place he would reach some time in the morning. East and ahead of the coast of North America, some 30 miles and more from the inner shores of Massachusetts, there stands in the open Atlantic the last fragment of an ancient and vanished land. For 20 miles this last and outer earth faces the ever-hostile ocean in the form of a great eroded cliff of earth and clay, the undulations and levels of whose rim now stand 100, now 150 feet above the tides. Worn by the breakers and the rains, disintegrated by the wind, it still stands bold. Many earths compose it, and many gravels and sands stratified and intermingled. It has many colors. Old ivory here, peat here, and here old ivory darkened and enriched with rust. At twilight, its rim lifted to the splendor in the west, the face of the wall becomes a substance of shadow and dark descending to the eternal unquiet of the sea. At dawn, the sun rising out of ocean gilds it with a level of silence of light, which thins and rises and vanishes into day. At the foot of this cliff, a great ocean beach runs north and south unbroken, mile lengthening into mile. Solitary and elemental, unsullied and remote, visited and possessed by the outer sea, these sands might be the end or the beginning of a world. Age by age, the sea here gives battle to the land. Age by age, the earth struggles for her own, calling to her defense her agencies and her creations, bidding her plants steal down upon the beach, and holding the frontier sands in a net of grass and roots which the storms wash free. The great rhythms of nature, today so dully disregarded, wounded even, have here their spacious and primeval liberty. Cloud and shadow of cloud, wind and tide, tremor of night and day. Journeying birds alight here and fly away again, all unseen. Schools of great fish move beneath the waves. The surf flings its spray against the sun. Often spoken of as being entirely glacial, this bulwark is really an old land surfaced with a new. The seas broke upon these same ancient bounds long before the ice had gathered or the sun had fogged and cooled. There was once, so it would seem, a northern coastal plain. This crumbled at its rim. Time and catastrophe changed its level and its form, and the sea came inland over it through the years. Its last enduring frontier roughly corresponds to the wasted dike of the cliff. Moving down into the sea, later glaciations passed over the old beaches and the fragments of the plain, and, stumbling over them, heaped upon these sills their accumulated drift of gravels, sand, and stones. The warmer sea and time prevailing, the ice cliff retreated westland through its fog, and presently the waves coursed onto a new, a transformed, and lifeless land. So runs, as far as it is possible to reconstruct it in general terms, the geological history of Cape Cod. The east and west arm of the peninsula is a buried area of the ancient plain, the forearm a glaciated fragment of a coast. The peninsula stands farther out to sea than any other portion of the Atlantic coast of the United States. It is the outermost of outer shores. Thundering in against the cliff, the ocean here encounters the last defiant bulwark of two worlds. When we first looked forth, the light from the lowering moon was decorating the view with sharply edged bars of light and cones of shadow cast by the white hills. But the moon was gone by the time we started, and only the lanterns of two parties, an hour and a half ahead, twinkled like orange stars on the vague floor. Silence reigned in the still air. Descending a gully of loose stones, we entered the ice and crossed the foot of the Grünhorn Glacier, which we were to mount the next day to the col at its head. The recent fallen snow upon the ice was not hard enough frozen to bear our weight, but this unpleasantness did not last, and, as we advanced below the foot of Ewig Schneefeld's broad ice field and up the Jungfrau Fern's left side, the surface was firm and crisp beneath our feet. What beautiful names the mountains and glaciers have in this region. The Maiden, the Monk, the Ogre, the Dark Eagle Peak, the Bright Eagle, the Peak of Storms, the Peak of Terror, the Field of Everlasting Snow. How much better than Mount Jones or Mount Mackenzie? The upper part of the Jungfrau Fern falls in swelling terraces from its encircling peaks and ridges, At each bend, open or covered crevices are numerous and have to be carefully negotiated. Shrieks from one of the parties we left behind informed us that a man had fallen into a hole and was in process of being hauled out. There was no reason to shriek, and, indeed, every reason not to do so, for help was not required and we might easily have been betrayed into going back. As it was, we had to halt till we could be sure that they were continuing their way. Excitable novices are a nuisance on a mountain, especially when they are led, as in this case, by bad guides. Good and careful guides seldom fall into crevices. They discover and avoid them. The process takes a little time, but the discomfort of being hauled out of a crevice is worth avoiding. The first grey indication of dawn, rendering our lanterns needless, seemed to come up simultaneously all round the horizon. It was long before a bed of orange light gave colour to the sky in the southwest. When we reached the highest level of the glacier, some way below the Jungfrau Joch, and were bending round to the west, the Jungfrau suddenly blushed a faint pink over all its rocky face, then grew pale, blushed again, and finally, waxing golden, shone for some minutes in singular glory before white daylight reigned. Some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. The things in our control are by nature free, unrestrained, unhindered, but those not in our control are weak, slavish, restrained, belonging to others. Remember, then, that if you suppose that things which are slavish by nature are also free, and what belongs to others is your own, then you will be hindered, you will lament, you will be disturbed, and you will find fault both with gods and men. But if you suppose that only to be your own which is your own, and what belongs to others such as it really is, then no one will ever compel you or restrain you. Further, you will find fault with no one, or accuse no one. You will do nothing against your will. No one will hurt you, you will have no enemies, and you not be harmed. Aiming, therefore, at such great things, remember that you must not allow yourself to be carried, even with a slight tendency, towards the attainment of lesser things. Instead, you must entirely quit some things and for the present postpone the rest. But if you would have both these great things, along with power and riches, then you will not gain even the latter, because you aim at the former too. But you will absolutely fail of the former, by which alone happiness and freedom are achieved. Work, therefore, to be able to say to every harsh appearance, you are but an appearance, and not absolutely the thing you appear to be. And then examine it by those rules which you have, and first and chiefly by this, whether it concerns the things which are in our own control, or those which are not, and, if it concerns anything not in our control, be prepared to say that it is nothing to you. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the moss cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells, with a sweet kernel to set budding more, and still more, later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or in a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn, among the river sallows borne aloft, or sinking as a light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the sky. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That which does not make a man worse than he was, also does not make his life worse, nor does it harm him either from without or from within. Do not act as if thou wert going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over thee. While thou livest, while it is in thy power, be good. Love the art, poor as it may be, which thou hast learned, and be content with it, and pass through the rest of life like one who has entrusted to the gods with his whole soul all that he has, making thyself neither the tyrant nor the slave of any man. Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom thyself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things that are and to make new things like them. For everything that exists is in a manner the seed of that which will be. It is no evil for things to undergo change, and no good for things to subsist in consequence of change. If thou workest at that which is before thee, following right reason seriously, vigorously, calmly, without allowing anything else to distract thee, but keeping thy divine part pure, as if thou shouldest be bound to give back immediately. If thou holdest to this, expecting nothing, fearing nothing, but satisfied with thy present activity according to nature, and with heroic truth in every word and sound which thou utterest, thou wilt live happy, and there is no man who is able to prevent this. This thou must always bear in mind. What is the nature of the whole, and what is my nature, and how this is related to that, and what kind of a part is it of what kind of a whole, and that there is no one who hinders thee from always doing and saying the things which are according to the nature of which thou art a part. Think of the universal substance, of which thou hast a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to thee, and of that which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it thou art.